Welcome, friends, to Miss V the Storyteller podcast. You know, I try to bring the very best to you. I try to find people who have stories that will impact our lives and to make it better. So today I'm excited because I have Natasha Tynes on our as a guest today, and she is going to tell us a little bit about herself. So, Natasha, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Natasha Tynes, and I'm an author and a journalist and a podcaster. I was born in Amman, Jordan, in the Middle East. And I've been working as a journalist and an author and a writer for almost 20 years now. So currently I have my own LLC, where I provide brands with and content creators with content. And I also do my creative writing. I've published a novel and I'm working on a second one. I also publish in newspapers, different publications. I do book reviews and others.
Perfect. So you know that she has had a wonderful background. She's probably been through some things and have some stories to tell. So you know I love a good story. I love anyone that can share and have a great story that can hopefully, inspire someone to do better if they're in the situation, to help them to be better at what they're doing. So, Natasha, what story are you going to share with us today? Or go ahead and share your story.
Sure. So I remember the story actually recently. Somebody asked me like a few months ago, what made you, when was the first time you realized that your voice might make a difference or you decided to actually write or publish your stories? So I thought about it and I remembered an instance that happened a long time ago in the 90s. Now you know how old I am. But I I was in college in Amman, Jordan, where I was born. And I was looking for just extra money to, help my parents pay the tuition and, just anything. So my friends told me about this telemarketing job, and it sounded, good. And because just they had flexible hours, and all I had to do is just, I guess, sell something on the phone. So remember that was in the 90s. There was no internet, there was no cell phones, nothing. So I go there and there was the manager. He interviewed me and he said, you're a good fit for the position, but we cannot hire you. And I was like, why can't you hire me? And he's like, because we only have available is the night shift from, I think, 5 to midnight. And I was like, okay, this actually works better for me since I go to school in the morning. And he said, no, we can't. You're a woman, you're not allowed to work in the evening according to the labor law. I was like, what? And he's like, I have no problem with you working there, but I cannot violate the law. So bear in mind, this was in the 90s. I'm not sure what happened to that law, if it changed or if it's still the same. So that was like, what, let's think over 30 years ago. And I know for a fact that women in Jordan work,
Hmm.
now in the evening shift. So I don't know what was the case in the 90s. So I was really mad because I told him, like, what do you mean? I have no problem with it. My parents have no problem with it. I just let me, she's like, I can't date, like, I would lose my job. So I was so mad and I decided to do something about it. So I wrote a letter to the editor, and it got published in an English publication called the Jordan Times. And the reason I chose this publication because it was like the only English publication and it was read by let's say people who are like in the embassies, and that I felt that they might have a say, or like they have an exposure to, let's say, people in power. And it got published, and I was like, wow, the editor actually accepted my letter. So that for me was confirmation that what I wrote was impactful. And then I got even a few responses from people who read it, and then there was someone who responded to the letter in a different letter and got published in the newspaper. So I was, I don't know, maybe 18 or 19 or something like this. And um that for me was the beginning of realizing that my voice can make a difference, especially
Mhm.
when you see something that you think is unjust or unfair. So, and this is how I got into writing, and this is how I got into journalism, and so that was my story.
Oh, I love that story. And as you were sharing your story, I remember working in a call center, and I was able to work in one. And a friend of mine, she knew that I was looking for a part-time job because during the day I taught school. But I wanted a part-time job so that I could buy this bedroom set. I didn't want credit. I wanted to pay cash for it. I knew exactly how much it was going to cost. So she told me about it. I applied for the job. They gave me the job, and it was for a company, it's AT&T, and it was calling customers. My shift was the late shift, like the shift you were offered. So I had the late shift, which was perfect. I could get off work, I can go home, change clothes, grab me something to eat, and get there in time, and I got off late, but it was fine. So what we would do is we would call customers that were already customers, and we would review their records to see if we could save them money. And well, I'll say this, my supervisor and I got along very well. We were very good, very close. And, he would help me. And then there were times when I would help him. Like if he needed to go outside and take a smoke, which he was not supposed to, I would like monitor. And if anybody had any questions, they would ask me. Well, this particular day, I don't know what was going on, but the men on the other line was just slicing me up. And what I mean by that, they were just being mean. So I called this man, and he was spending a lot of money. And I'm like, he needs to be in this particular program to save him money. So I'm telling him that, I'm calling him, I'm being nice, using my inside sweet voice and all that. And I'm telling him, and he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm from AT&T. I'm just letting you know we review your account, and we are calling you to let you know that you can save a lot more money because you do make a lot of international calls." Oh my goodness, this man lost it. He was like, "You don't know what the heck you're talking about. You're an idiot." And he's calling me names. And I'm sitting there like, dude, you're spending like an additional $100 a month. And I'm calling you from the company and trying to save you money. And you're calling me stupid and an idiot. So I said, because I had had enough, like I said, prior to him, men were just like being mean to me and ugly to me on the phone. So I said, "Well, sir, it doesn't seem like I, the idiot, because you're the one that's spending an additional $100 a month making international calls when we could put you in a program that's going to save you money. You sound like the idiot to me." Now, listen, I did not know that my call was being listened to. And what happened was my manager was doing a class for newbies, for the newbies coming in. And because me and him was so close and he could trust me, this particular day he piped in so that the new people can listen to, me do my work. But he listened to the wrong call because the newbies were like laughing at me. I didn't know they were listening. And he said, "No, no, no." He was telling them, "This is what you don't do. No matter what the customer does to you, this is what you do not do." And he came out to me and he said, "V, the newbies are listening to you. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, but he is being ugly and nasty towards me. And I've had enough. He was, but you can't do that. You can't just go back on the customer. So I learned a lot from working in that place. I learned a lot about businessmen. I learned, well, I shouldn't say just businessmen, but about business people in general. And sometimes they just don't want you to tell anything, even if you're trying to do something nice, even if you're trying to do something accommodating to them, they just don't want to hear it. And I don't know if it's because they don't want to hear it from a woman. I don't know if I don't know what it was, but they were that particular day were taken back. Now I had some really good days, some great chats and all that, but that day was just terrible. So the moral of the story, if you work in a call center, do not let the customer push your buttons no matter what. So Natasha, so with that experience, when you were in it, I know you were 18, whatever, how did you feel? Were you angry with him? Were you confused? What were your feelings in the moment? Like for me, I was angry at this man yelling at me. I got angry because he was calling me names. So when you were in it, how did you feel?
For me, I was angry because I felt it was unfair and it
Okay.
was unjust, and I wanted to channel that anger. And the only way I managed to, I mean, I'm sure I went and like complained to my friends and family, but that was not enough. I felt that I had to do something else, and I think for me, because I've always had this creative need to write and express myself since I was really young, that was the way that I chose to channel this anger. You know, others might channel it in sports or like music, or for me, I went immediately to writing and I sent a letter. So I felt that I was being wronged
Okay.
just because of my gender, and it was just unfair.
So when you wrote the letter and you shared from your heart, I'm sure how you felt, and you got the reaction that you got, how did that make you feel? Did that make you feel justified in like writing this letter? That's right. I want to
Yeah.
get the word out. How did you feel when you got the
Yeah,
recognition for the letter?
I felt that I did something good, that I saw injustice and I channeled it in the right way, you know, like I didn't get angry and like yelled at the man, and
Like me?
uh no, I mean, or like, got into like a bad situation, like where, like fought with my friends, or like, how people sometimes they channel anger in different forms. And and I felt that, what, maybe there is hope, that someday we as humans can fight injustice, and it just gave me hope, and it gave me um it rekindled my faith in myself and in humanity. Maybe it sounds cheesy, but it did. That stupid small letter to the editor,
No, it
and I,
is.
I still remember it, like 30 years later. I it still has had an impact on me.
Yeah, and I think to this day, that is a great way of getting your voice heard. Sometimes we feel like we have to use our literally our voice and go and protest and all that, which that is wonderful and that's a great avenue. But also just sitting down and writing a letter, and because of technology, cell phones and emails and all these different things, the art of writing is kind of being diminished to me. I feel like I'm a handwriter. I have a journal and I would handwrite. When I'm writing my stories, oftentimes I would handwrite them first and then, go back and put them. So, do you feel like in today's world, the world that we live in now, do you feel like pen to paper is still a good avenue depending on the situation that you're in? Let's say you have a boss on your job and this boss is just horrible. Do you feel like today, in today's world that we in, pen to paper would be a great avenue for someone who feels like they've lost their voice?
Yeah, for me, sorry about that. Let me, sorry, it's the male woman and my dog goes crazy.
Oh, I couldn't hear the dog. I can't hear the
uh,
dog barking.
you cannot?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Good, good. So I mean, until now, I journal, by hand. I have a journal and I use pen and paper. I tried different apps, and it did not give me that sense of letting go as a pen and paper gave me. And even studies shows it's more effective to write it down with a pen than type it. I also have a daily planner that I used all sorts of apps and platforms and paid money for all of it, but then I went to pen and paper. So until now, I feel, and studies also prove it, that if you really want to express yourself,
Mhm.
just go back to the basics and just write it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I find that's true, and I'm listening to you because there was a situation where I had gone out of town, and the airline lost my luggage, and I was going to be there. I believe I was going to be there a week, and so when I went to where were I? I wasn't going too far. Oh, I was going to New York, Syracuse, New York. I arrived in Syracuse, and I can't tell you where my luggage went. So, I went unclaimed, to let them know my luggage was, and they had no idea where my luggage was at the moment. So that day I had to go out and I had to buy clothes because everything was on it. Even I had a carry-on, but I didn't have any clothes in it. Lesson learned from that. Put some clothes in your carry-on just in case. But the next day, I called the airport and they still couldn't find my luggage. So that meant that I had to purchase clothes and, things for another day because the friend that I was visiting, she is a size like, I don't know, 4, and I'm times 4 times 4. So I could wear her clothes or anything. So I was very upset with the airline because I didn't feel like they took my situation seriously because I had to call. No one called me and said, we're still looking for your luggage or anything. So fast forward day 3, they finally find my luggage and I had to call to ask them about it. They finally found it. They said it would be on the next flight and it would be coming into Syracuse and I could pick it up by 4:30 that day. Okay, so we pick it up and everything, and I'm asking her, questions, and the lady behind the counter, she can't give me any answers. I don't know if she's having a bad day. So I was so angry at the way that they handled the situation because I am sure I was not the first person who had a situation like that. They should have protocols put in place. And I felt like it was dropped. So after I finished visiting her, I came home and I couldn't let that go. I couldn't
Mm.
let it go. So I talked to a friend of mine. She said, let me tell you what you do. You need to write a letter. You need to write them a letter and tell them about your situation. And she said, go online and figure out who the president of the company is, who's his secretary. And, she was giving me all that. Let me tell you, that was the most liberating thing that I had done in my life. I was afraid. I don't know why I was fearful, but I went and I wrote the letter and I told everything. Do you know the president sent me he emailed me back apologizing for the way that it was handled. And I felt like, oh my God, this is something that needs to be done when you feel like something is
Yeah.
wrong with you. Because prior to that, I would have never said anything. I would have just let it go. I would have been mad, but I would have just let it go. But I really found out that sending a letter really says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, when did you decide to say, okay, I've gotten published with my letters and all that, but I think I want to do something more. So,
Mm.
what was it that pushed you into saying, I want to be an author of books? and not
Mm.
just articles? What was that thing that said, let's be a writer?
So after I published that letter, I wanted to continue publishing. I just, like I realized this is what I want to do. So I knew a friend who was publishing in a newspaper. So I talked to her. She put me in touch with an editor at a different newspaper. And he told me he like took a chance on me. He's like, listen, I'll give you an assignment. Go to this, like there was some sort of an art exhibition. Go cover it and send us a piece, and we'll decide if we're gonna take you on as a freelance author. And I did, and he liked it, and I started publishing with him. And then after that, I suggested publishing a weekly column about life in Amman, Jordan, like being in your 20s living in Amman. And it got so popular. It became really popular. Like even publications profiled me here. Like you see this here. This is about see how I look like my daughter. But it was a long time ago again. And then I decided I want to get, become a journalist and get a degree in journalism. So I got a full scholarship, and I went to England, to London, and I got a master's in international journalism. And then I just continued writing and publishing in newspapers. And then in the back of my mind, I always knew that I wanted to publish a book. It's kind of like the natural progression, I guess. And I always wanted to publish novels because I love novels and reading. And so I published one novel, mystery novel. I'm working on a second one. And I know that someday soon I will probably either publish a memoir or something nonfiction related. So I think one thing led to another, and it all started with that one letter to the editor.
Isn't that something how just that one thing changed for me? And I like to write too. I've written a book. I'm working on my second one. And then I am a part of an anthology where I shared
Mm,
my story. And that was during the pandemic. And I absolutely loved it. But for me, writing books started in dreams. I was having
mm,
these dreams and I had characters in the dream, and I would wake up and I'm like, who is Christopher? I'm like, who is, Miss Bellamy? Who are these people? And then I went, the next night I go back to sleep and it's almost like it picked up. And it was
mm,
all dreams. And before I knew it, even before I wrote the first book, I had like 5 books in my head. I knew the characters, I knew the storyline, I knew all of it. And it was just amazing to me because when I was in school, writing was not a friend of mine because I'm dyslexic, but it was
okay.
never, I didn't know that in school. It was never diagnosed. Nobody ever noticed that about me. And I noticed it when I got in college. And
Mm,
we had a speaker to come in. They were talking about different learning disabilities. And as he was talking about dyslexia, I was like, oh my goodness, that's me.
yeah.
That is why I struggle. It wasn't that I wasn't a great reader. It wasn't, that I was, illiterate or anything like that. It was just that it was hard for me because I didn't know. And so once I got the tools, I'm like, hey, I like this. I enjoy writing. It's like freeing for me. And even now, do you do journaling in your for your personal, not professionally, but do you find yourself still using it as a tool? Like I have my journal, and at the end of the night or in the morning, I'm journaling. I'm getting stuff that's in me out.
Yeah, I still journal, not as often as I want to. It's funny, but usually I journal when I'm really upset.
Oh,
But yeah, I should journal when I'm really happy as well. But I've been journaling when I'm upset, or if I have a bad day. But yeah, I still do it. Sometimes I just forget. I think I need to work on having a better habit of it, but I still do it. And it's funny that I have my journals from when I was a teenager. and and it's helping me understand my teenage daughter, because in my journal, every page in my teenage years, ends in, this was the worst day of my life, right? And I was reading, why was this the worst day of my life? And it was like I had a fight with like a friend, or like I was at school and the teacher said something mean, and I was like, oh my god, this it really helps me understand how my like daughter every day is like, oh, this is awful, I hate my life. And it was just like, what's the problem again? And I also realized that when I looked at it, I was journaling in three languages: in Arabic,
Oh,
in English,
wow.
and in French. And
Wow.
I looked at my French. I was like, wow, my French was really good. And now my French is not that good because I don't practice. But you know, so now when I see my daughter complaining about school, I always tell her, listen, when I was your age, I spoke three languages and I
Mhm.
played the violin at the orchestra, at the national orchestra. What are you doing exactly?
I love that you said that, and you're a writer, because I have old journals too from when back. And sometimes I'll go back and pick up one of them and I'll read it and I realize how far I've come from back then. But it is so funny you said this about you will only write when you were angry. And
Yeah.
I noticed that this was probably about 15, 20 years ago. That is the only time that I was journaling, when I was going through something. So one year, I think it was like 2010 or something like that, I decided that I was going to do a good journal. I will only write good things in this journal. Let me tell you, Natasha, it lasts 3 months.
Mm.
It, it lasted 3 months. And I kept trying. I was like, but life was life. And as they say, it was just so
Yeah.
much going on. And I would try, and I'm like, you know what? I can't even. And then before I knew it, I had skipped like 4 or 5 weeks, because it was like, oh, I don't want to. But I tried, just like you said. So tell us the name of your first book and what is a little bit about the first book that you wrote and what inspired you to write this particular story or this book.
Sure. So the first book was published a few years ago. It's called They Called Me Wyatt. And funny you mentioned dream, because this was inspired by a dream actually. And I dreamt. I have very vivid dreams. I think I'm sure you have the
Yes,
same, because
absolutely.
we're storytellers, and I think that comes naturally to us. So in the dream, I had a dream that I was on a roof of a building somewhere, and somebody pushed me off the roof of the building, and I fell down and I died. And then I woke up in a body of a 5-year-old boy, and I'm
Mm.
seeing the world through that boy. So I decided to turn it into a short story. I thought, wow, like, it was really vivid. And I shared it with my writing group. I'm part of a writers group. And they said, wow, Natasha, this is great. Maybe you can turn it into a novel. It would work as a novel. And it all started with that just scene from my dream. So I, it became like a murder mystery. Who pushed her? The police decided it was suicide, and then she's reincarnated right into this body of that boy, and then she sees the world through him, and she's trying to tell the new parents, or the parents of the boy, about her life, but the boy cannot talk, my speech delayed. And then the boy grows up, lives a normal life, and then he finds out about the death of that woman 25 years before he was alive. And he just gets obsessed, like nobody knows why he's obsessed with that story specifically. And eventually he travels to the Middle East, tries to find out clues about it. And so
It
you have to read it to
sounds
see
it
if
sounds
you
great. All from a dream. I'm telling you, it is amazing. And just like you said, I'm visual. So I literally saw the characters, and one of the characters, I fell in love with her. I'm like, where did this lady come from? So I love it. So your next book, the one that you said that would be published soon,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Uh, so
Oh, before what's the name of the next one?
it's basically a trilogy. It's a three books series, and it's
Okay.
called the Tales of Karma. The first one is Karma Unleashed. It's about a woman from the Middle East. I always write about the Middle East because that's what
Yeah,
I know. I
that's
guess
what you know. Right.
it's hard for me to write about like in someone grew up in Iowa or Alabama because I cannot relate to that, right? So and it's someone from the Middle East who's in the American suburbs. Again, this is the life that I know now. But I did not name the country, just I invented a country in the Middle East. And this woman is kind of living, the quintessential American suburban life, but she has a secret, which is she can see the future,
Hmm.
and or a remote viewer. So when especially when people touch her, she has a dog. She walks the dog around the neighborhood, and people stop to pet the dog and whatever. And somehow they brush against her hand or something, and so she sees what's going on, and so she unravels the secrets of the neighborhoods, and there's a lot of secrets. And at the same time, there is a nemesis in the neighborhood that also has some superpower and knows about her and follows her around, telling her, I know what you're doing. So
Oh, that sounds so good. Oh my God. So you have to let us know when it comes out. So where can we find you? Where can we find, the books? And, if someone wants to reach out to you, they may be a writer out there or someone who has, gone through something and they want to write a letter. They're curious about yours. So tell us, where can we find you? Social media links or anything like that, if you would go ahead and share that with us.
sure. So I think the best place is just go to my website, natashatynes.com. You see my email, you see a link to my book, link to my articles. I also have some free stuff that I give, like free course, and other free ebook and others. And on Instagram, natasha.tynes, on Twitter, Natasha Tynes, YouTube, Natasha Tynes. So I'm on most of these channels. So yeah, please, and if anyone wants also to come on my podcast, I have a podcast called Read and Write with Natasha. I'm happy to have them on my podcast. I like to encourage new authors and aspiring authors and writers. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Real quick, so let's say someone is just not interested in that and just want the book. Would they be able to get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or
Yep.
any? Oh, so it is in those
It is
places?
it is available, yeah. I mean, I think I sent you the link, and if you can add it in the show notes, people can click, and
Perfect.
it's also on my website as well.
Okay, so I will make sure that information is in the show notes, just go down and just be able to click on it. So Natasha, thank you so much for coming here. I really enjoyed talking to you. And one of the things that I love is that you and I have so much in common,
Good.
especially about the dreams, because sometimes
Yeah.
you feel like you're a little, like, oh my God, does anybody else have this? You
Oh no,
know,
my dreams are very vivid. Very
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And just this little side note for me. Sometimes I cannot wait to go back to sleep to see where this
To
story
see,
is gonna
I
pick
know.
up. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, sometimes I go to bed and I tell my friends, let's see where I'm traveling tonight.
Yes, that's exactly what I do. I'm like,
Yeah,
what is this
yeah,
person gonna do today? So, oh, you
yeah.
make my heart just happy because I am not the only person
No, 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 you're
that
not.
has these thoughts. And that is one of the reasons why I love my podcast, my story, because people will find themselves in your world and it makes them feel good. Oh my God, I'm not crazy. Or, oh my God, she went through that and I'm going through that. So, love it. So, thank you so much for being here, for being an amazing guest. And please go out and support her. If you love reading, buy one of her books or even go and get some freebies and learn how to be a good writer.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you.